Number 5 on this list is actually a movie called Santa's Sleigh. Santa's Sleigh is a Christmas horror comedy movie that was released in 2005 and has a super unique take on Santa Claus as a whole. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this movie definitely isn't the scariest out there, but its premise is simply too good to not include in this video. Basically, Santa Claus, played by Bill Goldberg, isn't the happy-go-lucky, jolly, fat-bellied fellow that we know and love. In this movie, Santa is actually a demon. Now, this demon has no love for being Santa Claus, and he is actually only doing it as a punishment. The premise of the film is that Christmas never used to be a day of giving out presents, but for thousands of years it was called the Day of Slaying, and Santa would actually go around murdering people to his heart's content. This was right up until 1005 AD, where this demon Santa Claus had a bet with an angel that he lost, and then the angel forced him to give out presents on Christmas, or the Day of Slaying, for 1,000 years. Now, since this movie was released in 2005, and if you're keeping track of the math, that would put the demon Santa Claus right on schedule to continue his brutalistic murdering on the Christmas that this movie takes place on. Considering this movie stars Bill Goldberg, who is literally signed to a WWE contract right now and is quite the personality, the movie itself really isn't that scary, but the premise does make you wonder. Maybe Santa's origins are demonic in nature. Maybe Rudolph, instead of being a nice misunderstood reindeer, is actually a demon hellhound. Maybe instead of giving out presents, Santa really wants to be slitting our throats. I don't know, it seems like a bit of a stretch for sure, but definitely a fun thought to entertain. Number 4 on this list is the legend of Krampus. This is less of a terrifying story about Santa Claus, but more of a story about what happens without Santa Claus. In North America, if Santa believes that you've been bad this past year, then you can expect a lump of coal to fill your stocking. As a kid, obviously this sucked and you never wanted this, but the punishment you would receive in Germany or Austria was infinitely worse. Over there, if you've been bad over the course of a year, then rather than get a lump of coal, you will get a visit from Krampus. The lore suggests that Krampus is the antithesis to Santa Claus. If Santa was God, then Krampus would be the devil basically, and I can guarantee you that you do not want a visit from the devil. Often depicted as a goat-like humanoid being that has super large horns jutting from its skull and a tongue several feet long, Krampus is definitely not pleasant on the eyes. If he decides that you're worthy of a visit, then strap in for a long night. It's said that Krampus will enter your home and torture you for being bad. He may even take you away from your house and bring you back to his lair, where he will beat and torture you some more. Legend says that he's been known to kill and eat children as well for their behavior over the past year. A visit from Krampus is all bad, and if you are a child in Austria and Germany or around that area, you just need to cross your fingers and hope that Santa Claus doesn't skip your house this year. Number 3 on this list is the Gryther. Now, this is a demon that had its origins actually come from a television series called Tales from the Dark Side. This was a horror television show in the mid-80s that gained a decent following. The Gryther is said to be a demon that lives very close to Santa Claus. Separated from Santa's workshop by a mountain, the Gryther lives alone in an abandoned ship. This ship would have been an old exploratory ship used by sailors several decades ago when they were searching the Arctic. They clearly lost their sense of direction though, and all eventually died from starvation or the cold. The Gryther now calls this boat its home, which is slightly strange because it actually hates getting wet. Its appearance is pretty disgusting. It has long, slimy arms with massive demon-like hands and huge veins just pumping what looks to be this bluish sludge through its body. It's described in the show as being the most dangerous creature in the world. Lucky for us, this dangerous creature lives in the deep Arctic. However, there is a way for you to summon it. Even more than getting wet, the Gryther hates its name most of all. Apparently, every time you say its name, its ears will grow. This continues until they're big enough to act as wings, and the Gryther will fly out from the Arctic and come after the person who's been saying its name. Now, this is not something that you want to do though, because it won't be too pleased when it finds you, and taking this thing on in a fight probably will not end well. Now, nobody has any idea how many times you have to say this thing's name before its ears grow large enough to come after you, but I think in this segment I've probably said it like 5 or 6 times now, so probably a good time to transition, guys. Number 2 on this list is Frau Perchta. Frau Perchta is a Christmas time
demon witch creature in southern Germany and Austria. She has an iron nose that is in the shape of a beak. Her clothes are all beaten up, old rags, and she carries around a cane. That's not the only thing that she carries around though, because she also has a very sharp knife hiding beneath those grotesque rags that she wears. Frau Perchta is especially dangerous to the individual of the house who does the spinning. Now when I say spinning, I'm not referring to like a bicycle spinning, I'm referring to the action of weaving clothes. Yeah, this is an ancient legend, and it's said that this demon, Frau Perchta, is very specific about how she wants this spinning done. If you haven't completed your spinning by the correct date, which many people believe to be January 6th when the Christmas season finishes, then she will come for you. Now the severity of what she does will be determined by you and how much you have or have not accomplished. If all of your spinning is done, then you're safe and your home won't warrant a visit. If only half of it is done though, then you can expect the things that you haven't already spun to be lit on fire, which could then in turn cause your entire house to burn down. Now that's pretty bad, but listen to this. If you haven't spun everything that you need to, and when she gets to your house is a mess, dishes aren't done, floor isn't vacuumed, whatever it may be, well that's when she gets the knife. The legend says that if Frau Perchta isn't satisfied with the state of your home, then she will come into your room while you are asleep and disembowel you with her knife. She will take all of your innards, throw them around your room, and fill your dead body back up with rocks and sticks. I mean, not that the rocks and sticks matter to you at this point, your whole freaking organs are all over the floor, but it's still pretty bad. Either way, if you're living in Germany or Austria, I highly recommend bringing out the Swiffer and getting to work, because if you don't, you may just summon Frau Perchta. Number 1 on this list is the Stragel. Now this is a kind of add-on to the last entry of Frau Perchta, but also different in its own right. Frau Perchta, when she's flying around the region checking the homes for their cleanliness and spinning, will often be accompanied by a group of demonic assistants. If Santa has his kind-looking elves, then this is Frau Perchta's version of that, but really evil. These demons look like devilish wildebeests. They have long hair all over their bodies, run on 2 legs, long sharp horns coming from the crown of their head. Their faces are big and red and accentuate their large teeth that they have. These creatures aren't as concerned with the cleanliness of your home though. They have their own evil mission to uphold during Christmas time. It is said that as these demons traverse the region with Frau Perchta, they are looking for children who were bad. Now everyone's heard the story about Santa Claus bringing you coal if you were bad this year instead of presents, but these beasts bring something far worse: death. If they stumble upon a home that has a bad child in it, which they're capable of sensing, then they will go into that home and tear the child from their family. They will then proceed to brutally rip apart the body of this as a form of punishment for being bad this year. It is said that some parents can try and stop this from happening by leaving a meal on the front step. If these demons are satisfied with this meal, then they may leave that child alone for this year, but if they aren't, then they will break into the home and complete their mission. Similar to Frau Perchta, these demons can be avoided though. It's up to you as a child to be good all year, not only so Santa can bring you presents, but so these demonic beasts of the night don't come into your home and feast on your flesh. That's kind of the main reason, I would say.
Coming in at number 5, we have Neck Rper. There are many different stories about Neck Rper. Some say he is a demon, others say he is a dark elf. The word Neck in German means servant. He is a servant to St. Nicholas at Christmas time. There is a story told to the children of Germany how he became the servant of Father Christmas. One night, St. Nicholas was traveling across Germany and needed to rest for the night. He found a little inn tucked away in a forest. When he entered the inn, he noticed that something didn't seem right. He had stumbled onto a crime that had just happened at the inn earlier that night. Ruprecht was the innkeeper. He had taken the lives of his 3 sons. He had then put their bodies into the pickling barrel. St. Nicholas, due to his great power, was able to bring the boys back to life. He took Ruprecht to punish him for his actions. It is said he cursed him with immortality. That way he could forever suffer as his servant to repay his crimes. Neck Rper is a wild-looking man with great bushy beard, dressed in a hooded brown cloak. He is always seen carrying a large stick and a bag at his waist. It is said he has bells attached to his cloak so you can hear him coming. Children in Germany are taught that Christkind brought gifts on Christmas Eve, while St. Nicholas brings treats on December 5th. Then there is Neck Rper. He is a warning to children. If you're not appreciative of your gifts, if you're nasty to others, he will come and take you away. He would come to your door at the side of St. Nicholas. He did all of his heavy lifting. He would make sure that you knew your prayers. If you had a bad year, you would either receive a lump of coal or be stuffed into his bag and carried away. Some today even have stories of being taken away from their family, being made to do strenuous tasks like cutting firewood, then being returned as a warning to change their ways before it's too late. Coming in at number 4 we have Gryla. Gryla is an ogress from the mountains of Iceland. During the majority she watches over from the mountains, only appearing around Christmas time. She is similar to Neck Rper, helping to deal with naughty children. She is crueler though. Not only does she take naughty people, but she cooks them into a stew. Gryla does not work alone, she has a lot of helpers. She has 13 sons known as the Yule Lads. They are not as cruel as their mother. During the Christmas season they will play pranks on people, while also watching over their mother. She also has a giant pet cat named the Yule Cat. If you're naughty or nice, that does not matter to the Yule Cat. You can be an adult or a child, the Yule Cat will eat anyone they come across. The only thing that the cat does not eat is people who have received new clothes for Christmas. So f***ing weird. She is married to her third husband, Lepaluo. He lives in the Dimuborgia Lav Fields. This is known as one of the most supernatural locations in the world. There are many tales to scare anyone from attempting to visit. It is reportedly the site where Satan himself fell to earth. Gryla is feared throughout Iceland. She is a warning to all children to behave or you will be on her list. Once you're on her list, there is nothing you or your parents can do to stop her from coming to take you away.
Coming in next at number 3, Harry Stadling, Christmas Evil. Oh man, is this film creepy, and Brandon Maggott's depiction of a psychopathic killer obsessed with the idea of Santa Claus is definitely the kind of vibe to get your skin crawling this Christmas Eve. Written and directed by Lewis Jackson and originally released under the title You Better Watch Out, Christmas Evil highlights everything that is wrong with a grown man still obsessed with old Saint Nick, who then takes up the responsibility of dishing out gifts and presents to those that have been good and then, well, murdering those that have been bad with a hatchet, and on one occasion, a Christmas tree star. It's interesting to think that a Christmas-based slasher film could stand toe-to-toe with the likes of Halloween and Friday the 13th, and even more so with the fact that Christmas Evil actually addresses some incredibly tough themes. From a psychological perspective, this film is a successful depiction of a warped mind. From a moral perspective, this film is a social commentary on the gaping gulf between the rich and the poor, and the misinterpretation of charity and goodwill at this time of the year. Yeah, pretty lofty themes for a Santa slasher film, but against all odds, it works, and it's definitely one of the creepiest Christmas films you'll ever watch. You better watch out. Next up at our number 2 spot, Billy Chapman. In regard to horror, Silent Night, Deadly Night is arguably the greatest cult Christmas slasher ever made, which is a sentence I could never imagine myself saying. And the really interesting thing with this film is how much controversy it stirred up, because by today's standards, this film is a walk in the park compared to some of the gore for the sake of gore movies we've had recently. Still though, that doesn't detract from the fact that it's alive in all of its red suit and beard wearing Santa slasher glory. I'm not sure whether Silent Night, Deadly Night is still getting dragged through the mud by critics holding a grudge, but really it's the perfect demonstration of what horror can do when it doesn't take itself too seriously, and then puts it in a Santa Claus suit. That is not to detract from the character of Billy Chapman though, who is equal parts gory and equal parts insanely entertaining. He's the same ilk of Harry Stadling in Christmas Evil, which, may I add, didn't get any hate from critics for what is essentially the same film, although Billy Chapman is, well, let's say he's a more direct version. Literally, this film is 88 minutes of Billy Chapman dressed as Santa Claus, grunting punishment while swinging his axe at people. Merry Christmas. What's all the fuss about? And finally, at our number 1 spot, rare exports.
Selitä sille, että meillä on täällä pukki myytävänä.
This film is actually incredible, if not completely insane and quintessentially Finnish. It also features one of the greatest mythological Christmas monsters, the joulupukki, or the ancient version of Santa Claus in Finnish folklore, which literally translates to Christmas goat, or a horned demon that whips misbehaving children and boils them in a cauldron. Although we kind of don't get to see it in all of its glory, it's the build-up in this film that makes it all worthwhile. Plus, terrifying elves, which are actually skinny old men with beards that gnaw reindeer to the bone. That's all the spoilers you'll get from me, because Rare Exports is definitely worth a watch, whether you're feeling in the festive spirit or not. It's actually a great film, and reminiscent of the 30 Days of Night graphic novel, just the Christmas version, I guess, no vampires. It's a frantic mix of black comedy, pagan iconography, more mythological monsters than you can shake a stick at, all wrapped up in a horror movie on overdrive. What more could you ask for this Christmas?
To find out who is naughty or nice.
Rauhallista joulua.
Kicking off at number 5, the Krampus. Of course, you know this guy, it's the Krampus, the half goat, half demon, horned, terrifying monstrosity from Austro-Bavarian folklore. He's one of St. Nicholas's brave companions who act as an evil foil to the jolly, gift-giving nature of old Santa across Central Europe, particularly the Bavarian regions. They're like the death metal version of Santa, and they're pretty spooky. Well, with the 2015 release of the dark comedic slasher Krampus, directed by Mike Doherty, we got to see him in all of his terrifying glory. If you haven't seen it, Krampus is great fun, and so surprisingly creepy that it kind of takes you off guard. Don't get me wrong, it's a cut and shut movie, and there's nothing more to it than a terrified family being chased around town on Christmas Eve by a ravenous, unrelenting demon from Alpine folklore. But if that's not exactly what you want this Christmas Eve, I don't know what else to tell you. Next up at number 4, Sinterklaas. What do you get when you imagine Santa Claus not as the jolly, blushing, bearded sweetheart of an old man, but instead a skeletal Catholic saint on horseback, hell-bent on enacting revenge against a society that's turned its back against him? Well, you get Saint, or Sint in its original Dutch, based on the Netherlands folklore depiction of Sinterklaas, the patron saint of children. I'm not going to lie, this film isn't much more than 90 odd minutes of slasher death scenes, but if that's what you want this Christmas, you won't be disappointed. And there are a few genuinely creepy moments where the demonic Sinterklaas truly shines. This film actually stirred up such a fuss that parents across the Netherlands tried to get the poster banned from public areas, believing that small children would misinterpret the mutilated, demonic looking Sinterklaas with the actual happy version of Santa Claus. They're not the same, guys. Santa's got a sleigh and Sinterklaas slays. Sorry, I had to get that one in.
Number 3 on this list is another movie, but a far scarier one called Sint. Sint definitely takes Santa Claus to a more terrifying place than Santa's sleigh did. The movie is actually a Dutch film that was released in 2010, directed by Dick Maas and starring some local Dutch actors. The story begins all the way back in 1492. The Bishop Nicholas actually leads a cutthroat gang that ravages villages, steals, kills, and pillages to their heart's content. Certainly not the St. Nicholas that we are familiar with. Anyways, this Bishop Nicholas and his gang are finally murdered by some villagers who decide to revolt and fight back against their authority. This obviously isn't the end of the story though, because the ghosts of these gang members haven't had the last of these people on Earth yet. The gang was murdered on December the 5th, and every time that date coincides with a full moon, these ghostly apparitions appear on horseback and come to kill. They brutally slaughter hundreds of people. Women, children, the whole lot. This gang does not discriminate with who needs to die. This movie is a really interesting take on Christmas time legends and Santa Claus. Now I suppose the main ghost here, the Bishop Nicholas, isn't technically Santa Claus. In fact, in the movie they call him Sinterklaas, but I figured that's pretty close. He also looks a lot like Santa too, if Santa had been dead for like 500 years and liked to murder people, and that image alone is enough to keep me up at night. Number 2 on this list is the Incubus demon. Now the Incubus demon is far from Santa Claus in every way imaginable. Coming straight from Google, an incubus demon is a demon in male form who, according to mythological and legendary traditions, lies upon sleeping women in order to engage in sexual activity with them. So how does this predatory demon have anything to do with Santa Claus? Well, apparently a woman claims that she was attacked by an incubus demon who looked identical to Santa Claus on December 24th. The woman's name is Jane, and Jane was living with her husband in a suburban home in California. Her husband Mark wasn't home yet. He was coming back from a business trip very late and was going to get back at around 2 in the morning on Christmas Day. Therefore, when Jane was attacked, she was alone in the home. She went to sleep at around 11 p.m. and set up cookies and milk at her front door. This was less for Santa Claus and more as a little joke for her husband when he got home though. She went to sleep and entered into a vivid dream. In the dream, she was transported outside into the cold winter air completely naked. Freezing outside, she was trying to trek through the snow, but a blizzard kicked up and it was hard for her to see. Then she felt as her limbs froze to the ground, so she couldn't move anymore even if she wanted to. Right as that happened, the same freezing sensations entered her whole body and her stomach felt cold as ice. She woke up immediately and opened her eyes to see a figure on top of her. Her instinctual reaction was that her husband was home and waking her up. But seconds later she realized that wasn't the case. The figure was in a big, bushy coat meant for the cold, and its beard was scraping against her skin. She screamed at the top of her lungs, and the creature shot up to a sitting position. At that moment, she got the clearest view of what looked to be a demonic Santa Claus. The same features as Santa has, but black holes for eyes and black liquid coming from its lips. She didn't have time to scream again before the creature took its hand and put it over her face and immediately sent her back into a deep sleep. She woke up the next morning with her husband laying next to her and the room as it was before she went to bed. She told him the whole story, but he tried to calm her down and convince her that it was just a bad dream. Although a nightmare could have been the cause, to this day Jane swears that the experience was as real as anything she's ever felt, and that she was attacked by an incubus demon that looked identical to Santa Claus. Number 1 on this list is a serial killer mall Santa. This is a 100% real story of a serial killer who doubled as a mall Santa as his day job. This isn't that far removed from today either, because the man pleaded guilty to several counts of first-degree murder in 2019 and was given a life sentence. The serial killer in question is Bruce MacArthur, and as I said, his day job was as an entertainer and would often be a mall Santa. Between 2010 and 2017, 8 men disappeared from a neighborhood in Toronto, Ontario. 5 of the bodies were found, but 3 have still yet to be discovered. All of these killings were the work of Bruce MacArthur. Thankfully, Bruce is behind bars now, but I personally find it extremely chilling to think that somebody who was acting regularly as a mall Santa in the Christmas months was also a serial killer in his private life. A mall Santa is someone who you let your kids go to and take pictures with, and to think that people were unknowingly putting their children in the hands of this man is really unsettling. Santa is supposed to be about joy and happiness, and there is absolutely none of that in the life of Bruce MacArthur.
Coming in at number 5, we have Alcatraz. The island of Alcatraz has always been a place for punishment. In its early days, it was a place of banishment for miscreants. People were sent to the island to be tormented by the ghosts that have always haunted the land. And if that didn't work, they would fight for what little they had to share on the island. In 1934, the notorious federal prison of Alcatraz was built. The torturing of souls continued during the prison's time. It was eventually closed in 1963 and is now a tourist location for those brave enough to walk the haunted land. There is a lot of paranormal stories that came out of Alcatraz for those who visit it today. The screams of past inmates or the feeling of being watched. But while the prison was open, the guards told a story of something that happened to both of them and the inmates on one Christmas day in the 1940s. Although the prison was known to be a horrible place to be locked up, once in a while the guards did show what little compassion they were allowed. They decided to give the inmates a great Christmas dinner. Everyone was enjoying themselves at the meal when suddenly the joy was brought to a fast end. The temperature in the room suddenly dropped and all of the candles were blown out. There was a moment of silence as no one knew what was happening or how to react. They were all in a state of shock. Suddenly, in the middle of the room, an apparition appeared. It appeared as an older man in a grey suit. After a few moments of stunned silence, a prisoner shouted at the apparition in disbelief and it vanished. It brought the Christmas celebration to a a quick end and the prisoners were sent back to their rooms shaken and confused. They murmured among themselves about what they just saw, trying to make sense of it. The guards were too shaken to stay in the residence, so they took turns on shift while others made the journey home. The warden James Johnson told the story partially as a warning to others who worked there in case the apparition ever returned. Coming in at number 4 we have Hever Castle. For anyone who is unfamiliar with Anne Boleyn, she was the second wife to King Henry VIII. Henry went to great lengths to marry Anne. Divorce was not allowed within the Catholic Church during this time. Henry decided to end ties to the Catholic Church and create the Church of England, just so that he could have a divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Henry was determined to get a male heir to his throne and famously went through 6 wives to achieve this. He got his divorce and married Anne Boleyn. She gave him a daughter. She did give birth to a male heir, but unfortunately he did not make it. After this, he grew bored of her and had her tried with adultery. Anne was sentenced to beheading and died on May 19th. Henry remarried on May 30th. Anne's story was tragic, and usually tragic ends leave spirits with unfinished business. Since her death, there have been rumours of her being spotted around Hever Castle. Hever Castle was her childhood home in Kent. It was reportedly the place that made her most happy, and she missed being here during her marriage. It is said that if you were to visit the castle on Christmas Day, you would see her walking the grounds. Guests have seen a figure believed to be her dressed in all white while walking over the stone bridge towards the home, as if she is finally returning home each Christmas to be with her family. Coming in at number 3 we have Bertha. Bertha, also known as the Frau Perchta, is a Christmas time witch from southern Germany and Austria. Her appearance is that of an old crone. She has a beaked nose made of iron. She wears rags and carries a crane. She hides a large knife under her rags. Bertha is known for her obsession with domestic neatness. She is obsessed with people keeping a clean home. Legend has it that you have to have your home in order by January 6th. By this time you should have made sure your home has been cleaned for Christmas. This goes back to an old tradition when women were not only homemakers but were expected to make the clothing for their family. On this day is when you would start to create the clothing after the holidays. Bertha's job was to punish these lazy women who hadn't started their weaving. In more modern tellings of Bertha, she looks for domestic distress. A messy home will attract her vengeance. She is said to set fire to a messy home. She looks to clear the mess while also punishing the lazy. Unlike the others on this list so far, this is not a tale to scare children, but the adults. If you don't take care of your home, then she will take care of you. Apparently there is one thing that might save you. If you leave out a bowl of traditional porridge for her, she might forget the mess. Coming in at number 2 with Bel Snickel. Many people have heard of Bel Snickel thanks to The Office. Bel Snickel comes from folklore in Pennsylvania, Dutch communities originating from Germany. He is also often seen as a right-hand man to St. Nicholas. Bel Snickel likes to dress in furs and sometimes wears a mask with a long tongue. Carries around a whip in order to beat those who have been naughty throughout the year, but also cakes, nuts and sweets in his pocket to reward those who have been good. In some areas they are not told of Santa or St. Nicholas at all. They only know Bel Snickel to decide who is naughty or nice and give them the appropriate gifts, or a whipping. Bel Snickel shows up to homes 2 weeks before Christmas. He will ask you a question and your answer decides if you have been nice. If you answered correct, he would throw candies on the floor. If you got excited and jumped for the candies too soon, you would also be seen as naughty. Although Bel Snickel would literally strike down with his whip those he did not think were worthy people, still prepare and celebrate the impending arrival of Bel Snickel. It is said that there were dances and songs sung for Bel Snickel to try and win his favour before judgment. He is feared but also loved by those who have always been on his good side. Since the Christmas episode of The Office where Dwight spreads his Christmas joy through dressing up as Bel Snickel, he has seen a revival in popular culture, even appearing in the Christmas Chronicles too, as the dark elf who turned on Santa and is looking for revenge for not feeling a part of the Christmas family anymore. Bel Snickel is always depicted as an angry and violent version of St. Nicholas. He is fascinating to read about, but I don't think I want to visit from him anytime soon. And finally, in at number 1 we have Krampus. Of course, in at number 1 is Krampus. Krampus is by far the most dangerous and terrifying on this list. He is not a dark elf or a witch looking for revenge, but a demon. Some even say he is the brother of Satan. Some say that Krampus folklore even predates that of St. Nicholas. He was then incorporated into Christian winter celebrations, being paired with St. Nicholas, who of course is the good side to the bad depiction. Krampus resembles the devil with large horns and red skin. He has sharp, dangerous teeth with dark, sunken eyes. He has a large tongue that he also keeps hidden, as well as hoofed feet. Sometimes he will choose to wear wear a hooded cape to hide his face. The cape resembles that of Satan, so he can trick people into thinking he is him. Overall, he appears to be a half goat, half demon nightmare, so he's extremely terrifying. Unlike the others on this list, he has direct ties to the underworld and is able to haul those he sees as naughty down there as punishment. Austria banned all mentions and celebrations of Krampus in 1932, as it was seen as a celebration of the devil, and they were fearful of what he could and might do to people. Krampus also carries chains. Appearing to once have been his own shackles, he now uses them to keep people in line. The event, called the Festive St. Nicholas, is celebrated in Europe on December 6th. On the night before, this Krampus appears, joined with St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas only concerns himself with the good, delivering gifts and spreading joy to them, while Krampus takes care of the bad. Depending on the severity, you would either receive coal or be taken away to the underworld, all down to the judgment of Krampus. After being banned for many years due to the danger he can cause, Krampus is not making a massive comeback. Due to all of his depictions in popular culture, Krampus is celebrated now more than ever. We do need to be careful though, Krampus is not someone you want to mess with. Satan has sent him to deal with the bad around Christmas time, and he has all the same powers as his brother. He is a ruthless demon who can be cruel when it comes to his work. That being said, if you do leave offerings out for Krampus, it is said to help with his judgment. After all, the devil is greedy, and demons can often be swayed if there is something promised to them. All of this comes down to one thing: be good or you might have all 5 on this list to answer to come Christmas. There is no shortage of vengeful urban legends who will look to punish you.
Number 5 on this list is hitting the elf. As far as the story with the elf on the shelf goes, if a child is to touch the elf on a shelf, then all of its magical abilities will leave, and the only way you can bring it back is to sprinkle cinnamon around it and leave it overnight. If you do that, then its magical abilities will return, and it will continue reporting to Santa Claus. However, there's a legend that if instead of touching the elf, you hit it or abuse it in some way, rather than lose its magical ability, you turn the elf into a force of evil. Similar to the legend of Krampus, where he will punish you for being bad, this elf will do something similar if you abuse it and it labels you as a bad kid. Now that you're labeled as an especially bad kid and have harmed the elf, it will turn from a nice elf into an evil elf meant to make you pay for your actions. If you do this, then you can expect the elf to awaken in the night, except instead of reporting back to Santa Claus, it will enter your room and beat you the same way that you beat it. This will be an extended torture session from this now demonic elf whose only mission is to make you feel the pain that it felt. This process will occur every night right up until Christmas time, when the elf will finally go away. However, that might mean that you could be getting tortured every evening by a demonic elf for weeks. Apparently, even if you try to kill this elf or send it away during the daytime when it should once again sit on your shelf, it will still come and find you in the night and be even angrier than it was before. Nobody knows how you can combat this thing if this ever was to happen to you. So the legend just further enforces that you shouldn't touch the elf on the shelf, and if you do, then make sure you don't intentionally harm it in any way. Number 4 on this list is the tiny camera. The whole elf on a shelf thing has really taken off in the last few years, with millions of tiny little elves being sold. It has also become one of the biggest trends come Christmas time and synonymous with the holiday itself. The whole nature of the elf on a shelf is to watch you in your home and make sure that you're good. We suspend our disbelief a little bit and believe that this little tiny elf doll comes to life and then reports that back to Santa. In one family's elf on a shelf though, this info wasn't going back to Santa Claus at all. In 2011, a family had an elf on the shelf for about 3 weeks before they noticed this wasn't just an innocent doll. Inside the elf was a tiny camera that was sending video to a feed. The camera was dead when they found it, but they have no idea how long it would have been running and recording them. This sparked a theory that the elf on a shelf is a method for big corporations to get inside our homes and learn more information about us. People have even gone further with this and theorized that it may be the government who's behind this and wants to have an extra eye on what's going on in the typical domestic lifestyle. It's also possible that in that one instance with the family, a creeper installed the camera and it was going to one select person. They never found out how the camera got there or who it was going to, so it's left it up in the air for people to speculate on. Having thousands of mini cameras installed in these tiny elves to watch us seems a little bit far-fetched to me, but we've seen the government or corporations do crazier things before. Number 3 on this list is Mormo. Mormo is the name given to one very particular elf on the shelf who is quite unlike the rest of them. Legend says that there is one elf that tries to impersonate an elf on the shelf and break into your home. This creature is a demon though, whose only intentions are to kill. This legend started due to a brutal murder which took place a few years back. A wife and a husband had both been killed in a way that the police had an extremely hard time understanding. When the authorities got to the home and discovered the crime scene, there was blood everywhere and the couple was both lying in the middle of their living room. There was no signs of forced entry and nothing was taken though. The authorities thought that it might be a murder-suicide. However, the manner of their death indicated that a third party was involved. One thing that stood out to the police was the blood-spattered elf on a shelf positioned on the mantelpiece in full view of whatever it was that took place. The police were never able to determine the true cause of death, but this story sparked the legend of Mormo, the demon elf on the shelf. Now, people believe that every time you get an elf on the shelf, you are simply rolling the dice and could end up with Mormo. If you do, then it's very possible that you and your family will die in a tragic and unexplained way before Christmas time. I'm not sure how much validity this has to it. Kind of seems like somebody really ran with the story on this one, but having a devilish killer elf on the shelf like Chucky certainly isn't a pleasant thought. Number 2 on this list is that the entire Elf on a Shelf story was constructed by a demon. The entire premise behind the Elf on a Shelf is a little creepy to begin with. You're letting this magical little doll into your home to watch and judge your actions. Then when you're asleep, this doll gets up and flies back to Santa to let him make a final judgment on if you are good or bad. It's basically like a Christmas version of Big Brother. That being said though, we love Christmas and we love Santa so much that when we think about Santa, it doesn't seem so bad. But what if this elf on the shelf isn't reporting back to Santa at all? What if it was reporting back to a demon? In 2008, a woman who had an elf on the shelf started to notice little things missing from her home during the Christmas season. First it was her keys, then it was some of the kitchenware, and then some other more valuable items. She also started to notice that things started to go wrong. Appliances that were relatively new just stopped working. Leaks were happening in the home and the electricity kept going on and off. She had no idea what the catalyst of these problems could have been until she linked it to the elf on the shelf. They only started happening when she brought that thing into her home. Since then, other rumors have surfaced about people noticing things that are missing from their homes whilst having this little elf in their house. The story has snowballed to a place where there is now a community of people who swear these things aren't working for Santa at all, but actually for a mischievous demon. A demon who simply wants to wreck the Christmas season and cause chaos in your home. It should also be noted that the items and things that went wrong kept getting worse and worse the longer you kept that thing in your home. So who knows how bad things could get if you keep that thing in there for the entire season. Number 1 on this list is a devilish name. A rule associated with the elf on the shelf is that the family housing this elf must give it a name. Typically people go down the silly route and name it something like Mary Martha or Twinkle Toes or something ridiculous like that. All of that is fine and good and very in the Christmas spirit. However, there are a few names that you need to avoid when you're naming your elf on the shelf, or you may run the risk of devilish possession. Names such as Lucifer, Bile, Gorgo, these names are all infernal names, which are names that are linked to anti-hero figures used in satanic rituals. If you ever give your elf on the shelf an infernal name, and there's actually a full list of infernal names that you can look up if you want to double check, but if you do this, then you just open the door for your elf to become possessed by a demon. Just because the door is open doesn't mean that any demon will walk through it. However, you don't really want to be giving them the option in the first place. Christmas time is a time of love and family, and also to celebrate religion, all really nice things. If you are a demon though, this is one of the worst times of the year and you are itching to cause any type of chaos that you can and ruin the fun. If a demon takes over your elf on a shelf due to its name, then there's no limit to the amount of nastiness it could cause. Not only could this devilish puppet haunt your home, torture you in the night, or wreck your style of living, but now that a demon is in your home and possessing this elf, what's to say that it won't start trying to possess you? Also, typically these elves leave a little bit after Christmas, but there's no timeline when it's possessed by a demon. That thing could stay and destroy your home and even your lives for however long it feels like. My advice is to stick to the silly when naming your elf on the shelf.
Number 5 on this list is the demon spirit of Hans Trapp. Back in the 1400s in France, there lived a very powerful and rich man named Hans Trapp. Hans was extremely well off and had quite a lot of influence in the region he was living in. This wasn't enough for him though, he wanted more. Described by others as being extremely greedy and merciless, Trapp started engaging in some very questionable methods to grow his fortune. In fact, it's reported that Trapp went so far as to make some deals with the devil. Once this reached the ears of the church, they very swiftly excommunicated Hans Trapp and sent him away from their lands, confiscating all of his property and wealth along with it. Embarrassed and stripped of all of his power, Hans was furious at the church. He made his way into the mountains, where he built an extremely makeshift home out of the materials that he had available to him. It was in this self-made den that he stewed and brooded. His anger and frustration cooked, and it bubbled to a point where Hans Trapp could be described as being completely evil. Right around this period of time as well is when his mind started to go, or at least that's what people assume, because what he does next is not something that any sane person would do. Hans Trapp gathers up straw from around his home and makes himself into a scarecrow. Then on Christmas, he waited on an abandoned road for travelers to stumble upon him. Sadly, it was a 10-year-old boy who walked past him first. Hans Trapp stabbed the boy to death and then took his body and dragged it back to his home. It was there that he cut up the body and turned it into a meal as a way of praising Satan. It's said that before he could eat it though, God struck Hans Trapp with a bolt of lightning for being so abhorrently evil and sent him straight to hell. Good riddance, God. However, now on Christmas, the demonic spirit of Hans Trapp breaks out of hell and will hunt for children who haven't been good. If a child has been bad, then he will find them as his scarecrow self. Basically, he will be summoned, but he will only be summoned to you if you've been bad this past year. So be good, and you should be safe. Number 4 on this list is the Karakonkolos. Now this creature is known to some to be the Christmas Bigfoot and lives in Turkey. It only appears during the Christmas holidays, and there is actually nothing that you can do to stop it. That's right, you actually have no ability to summon or unsummon this beast. However, you do have a say in whether or not it chooses to kill you. If you happen to be walking on the streets of Turkey during the Christmas holidays, then there is the potential for you to run into this creature. Now it's important to not freak out, however that's easier said than done, because this demon is pretty scary. It is a very large, hairy creature that reminds a lot of people of Bigfoot, but with potentially a little bit more ogre-esque qualities to it. Even though this creature may appear as just a brute on the surface, it's actually very intelligent, and if you run into it, it will want to ask you a riddle. Now you have to answer this riddle. If you walk away, the demon will most likely take serious offense and make you pay with your life. The riddle itself is very dangerous too though, because your answer must include the word black. If it does not include this word, then you will be killed right where you stand. You also need to make sure that you get the answer to the actual riddle correct, because a wrong answer could cost you your life as well. Sadly, this creature is difficult to avoid. Sometimes it takes a more tactful approach in getting your attention, waiting outside your home and mimicking the voice of someone you know until you come out and you have to play with it. One way it will occasionally kill you as well is by immediately paralyzing your body in a trance. It's said that it has the capability and then it will put you into a deep trance and leave you outside so that you'll just freeze to death. The entire time though during this trance, your brain is cognizant as well, and you will have to be conscious as you slowly die. Maybe just avoid trips to Turkey during Christmas time, folks.
Coming in at number 3, we have Bramshill House. This story started back in the 17th century. A young woman named Anne was getting married on Christmas Day at Bramshill House in Hampshire, England. After the wedding, the guests were all enjoying the celebrations. It was tradition for the wedding guests to carry the bride to her bedchamber at the end of the evening. The bride wanted to play a game before the end of the evening though. She wanted to hide and have the guests go and find her. She was given a 10-minute start. The guests looked high and low everywhere they could, but they could not find her. The guests started talking that she had fled, leaving her new husband, Lord Lovell, behind. He was distraught and didn't believe that his love would ever leave him like this. He never stopped looking for her. He looked for her for years. She never showed up. On one day, 50 years after her disappearance, he was spending some time at Bramshill House. Mourning his lost love, he was looking around the attic, drawn to it for some reason. He was knocking on the wood when he found a secret hidden door. Inside, he found an old wood chest. He pried the heavy door open, which appeared to be stuck. When he did manage to open the chest, he found the remains of his love, still in her wedding dress, clutching her flowers. There were scratches covering the inside of the lid. It seemed that she thought she had found the perfect hiding spot and climbed inside. The lid closed and locked on her, leaving her trapped forever. It seemed she gave her escape escape a desperate attempt. As he found her, he broke down. He was distraught, looking for her for the past 50 years, but finding she had met such a tragic end didn't make him feel better. At that moment, she appeared to him. She didn't speak, but he felt a warm presence around him, as if she was saying it was okay. All she wanted for him was to finally find out what happened. Since she was found, other guests have reported seeing her around the grounds. A bride in her dress had been seen walking the hallways late at night and around the grounds in the dead of night. It is said that if you're there on Christmas night, you may hear a woman crying, mourning her lost love and her married life that she never got to experience. Coming in at number 2, we have Highwayman. This happened on a woodland road on Christmas Eve. A highwayman is the term given to men who typically on horseback would hold travellers at gunpoint to rob them back in the 18th century. There was a particular notorious highwayman in this area named Gilbert. One evening, a woman and her father were travelling through the area with their stagecoach. When they came across his path, he stopped the coach and ordered them to get out. As the woman got out of the coach, the horses got spooked and took off into the night. When the woman looked into Gilbert's face, she instantly recognised him. He had killed her brother a couple of months previously. Without hesitation, she pulled a concealed knife from under her cape. She threw the dagger into his stomach and fled. When the horse got under control, the dad returned to rescue his daughter. They found Gilbert on the side of the road. He had already passed from his wounds. They couldn't find the daughter though. The local village began to look for the daughter all through the woods. When they finally found her, she had been driven mad. They brought her home and never recovered from the experience. Something in her had snapped in those woods. From that day, everyone avoided them. It is believed that the land is now cursed and the woods are haunted. It's said that if you were to wander into the woods on Christmas Eve, you'll see the ghostly scene repeat itself at the same time it did that evening. Gilbert was buried not far from where he passed, and it's believed his spirit is angry from what happened. Be careful not to stumble upon his cursed land. And finally, in at number 1, we have Christmas Day. This is a disturbing story of one man in California and his horrific act at Christmas. The story started when the man and his wife had an argument on Christmas Eve. The wife was pushed, she knocked her head on the toilet and passed away. The man carried her to bed to sleep even though she was no longer with them. The story is told by their eldest child, who was 17 at the time and witnessed everything. The man then went on to prepare the presents under the tree for the children the next morning. The next morning, when they came down to celebrate Christmas, the mother was sat propped up on the sofa. One of the daughters told the police, "I remember trying to touch my mum and she was just rock hard, cold, and I said, 'Mummy,' and she didn't respond." He finally called the police after the children had opened the presents. The man was sentenced to jail. A few years later, a new family moved into the home and it was coming up to Christmas time. On Christmas Eve, when the children had gone to bed, the parents were preparing for the morning. They suddenly felt the air in the home go cold. They heard cries from upstairs and went to see if it was one of the children. They realized the children were still sound asleep in their bed. The tap started running, so they followed the sound and turned it off. Already scared about what was happening, they were unsure what to do. The mother looked in the mirror and saw a woman staring back at her. The woman mouthed, "Help." At this point, the woman screamed in terror and ran out of the bathroom. The husband went to look but didn't see the same apparition. The couple were shaken. After this, nothing else happened over Christmas. After looking into it, they found out that the tragic events that occurred in the home. In California, you only need to disclose a death in the home if you specifically ask. They didn't ask and therefore had no clue about any of this until it happened. She was shocked to see the picture of the woman who had died. That was exactly who she had seen in the mirror that Christmas Eve.